for f***'s sake. This guy's just talking absolute. So welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to react to some videos on YouTube. Today we're looking at Jordan Peterson. Now he's obviously known for his rules for life and his psychology work, but he also is quite outspoken about food too. He's especially outspoken around food, climate, and the fact that he's on a carnivore diet. Now there's a video I found online of him talking about the food pyramid in America, and I'm going to watch it with you, and then we're going to see if he's talking absolute nonsense or not. Whilst he is incredibly knowledgeable about philosophy and psychology, he does seem to step outside of his lane a little bit when it comes to climate change. So I'm quite interested to see what he says. Let's just dive straight into it.
In such circumstances, in the face of such mandatory privations and manipulations, it's obvious that the last thing our tyrannical, idiot, panicked, virtue signaling
Why is everything that he talks about tyrannical? Why does he use that word so much? Like literally, it's just unnecessary, you know? It's like trying to make everyone out to be evil when it's really not the case.
Governments should be doing is directing their demented attention toward regulating what people serve at their tables.
Just 1 second. So basically in the history of time, for the history of the world, we have always regulated food. It's something that goes back hundreds, if not probably thousands of years, from when people made bread and like it was adulterated. So producers of bread would put things that are inedible into bread, and then governments would create laws around that. I think some of the oldest laws are trying to prevent the adulteration of food. And now he's obviously talking more specifically about what we can and can't eat on our table, but like bear in mind that we do have laws around what we can and can't eat. For instance, certain types of animal production are not allowed, like animal meat production are not allowed. We have laws preventing animals being either raised or slaughtered in certain ways. So, you know, it's totally fine. This is not anything new. Our food system evolves, and I don't think that anything's been banned. Like I don't remember meat being banned or seafood being banned or vegetable. I don't know what he's talking about at the moment because I've just started and already it's kind of ridiculous, but I don't think we're talking about like anything being completely removed from people's tables. Let's carry on.
But because meat has also been deemed yet something else that is destroying the planet, the woke narcissists of compassion are already insisting that people eat less of it.
Yeah, well, that's because meat has a huge environmental impact. And there are lots of people who, every time that I say that, there are lots of people who go, oh, but I'm a farmer and like my soil health is improved and I'm improving the ecosystem in which my cows live and all this. And that's probably true for the farmers who are saying it, and I respect that. However, there's also loads of meat that's produced around the world in some of the most deleterious, environmentally harmful ways. And we as consumers don't always know which one of those we're getting. And in fact, often it's very hard, as I proved in one of my recent videos, it's very hard to actually find environmentally friendly meat. And if you do find it, it probably costs about 4 times more than the regular meat in the supermarket. So yeah, in general, meat has a much, much higher impact on the environment, except for in some cases where it's being produced really well. So if you're buying from a local farmer and you know exactly what they're doing to produce that, say beef, chicken, etc., whatever, then great, that's great. But for most of us just who go down the supermarket, we do not have a clue where our meat is coming from. So you know what? It is better to eat less of it. Anyway.
Plants and bugs for you and your children, peasants.
What?
And the sooner you get accustomed to it, or else, the better.
Like, who does he think is being like, hell, they got a gun held to your head, you must eat plants? I mean, I know that people get very upset about food and there's a lot of arguments around diets on social media, and I totally understand that. People, I think that food is a bit like religion in that respect. You know, people really sort of hold on to a certain identity and they'll argue and fight over that. So I do get that there can be a lot of arguments online. However, nobody's holding a gun to anyone's head and saying, you've got to eat plants. I mean, this is just ridiculous. There probably are some people out there saying that we shouldn't eat meat, and there are probably people like Mr. Peterson himself saying that we should eat meat. And that's fine, but that's what debate is about. It's about both having sides of the story. No one's being forced to eat bugs. In fact, for the last 10 years, food producers have been trying to introduce insect protein into our food system in the UK, and we, the consumers, don't buy it. We don't like it. So it's not happening. That's why we're not getting like bug salads in the supermarkets, because, well, we don't like it. And then no one's then forcing it down our throat. In fact, that's the last thing the government will do, is actually legislate about what we have to eat. So I don't know where he's getting his ideas from, but I think he's getting a bit carried away. Anyway, let's carry on with this.
Let's turn our attention to the claim that animal husbandry and the meat it produces cheaply enough for everyone to afford is unsustainable. For a moment, because we haven't yet dispensed with enough moralizing and authoritarian stupidity. Remember what happened the last time that government agencies applied their tender mercy to determining what the people they serve should consume? We were offered the much vaunted food pyramid, telling us to eat 6 to 11 servings of grains and carbohydrates a day.
I don't know where to start with this. So he's now saying that environmental concerns around food, to try and help people to eat healthy foods. Remember, by the way, that every large-scale study shows that food that is better for the environment is also better for human beings. As in, if you eat a more environmentally sensitive diet, it was also healthier. It's better for you personally too. This is like an interconnection, and obviously logically it makes sense, but there is science that proves this too. Okay, and then now he's trying to say that the government taking action on environmental issues relating to food is somehow the same as the food pyramid in America, which is their nutritional guidelines, which it's just comparing apples and oranges. It's just two entirely different things. And so I'm interested to see where he goes with this, but already he's doing some heavy lifting with his comparisons.
With protein and fat at the pinnacle, something to be indulged in with comparative rarity, if indeed necessary at all. That all turned out to be wrong, and not just a little wrong, but so wrong that it might as well have been not just wrong, but a veritable anti-truth, something as wrong as it could possibly get. The food pyramid was brought into being not least by the US Department of Agriculture, that is, by marketers, not scientists or nutritionists.
Honestly, this is something else. I'm interested to see where he goes with this, because the food pyramid, the American nutritional guidelines, now they are controversial. I'm not saying they're good or perfect in any way. They are probably influenced by industry. They have struggled to make any meaningful change. There have been debates over the American meat industry, the American dairy industry, sort of really having their hands involved in influencing what's in those guidelines. And obviously the health and life expectancy of Americans is kind of declining as far as I'm aware. So obviously the food pyramid is not having the impact that perhaps people want it to have. However, to say it's a complete and abject failure it's a stretch. Anyway, let's see where he's going with this.
With no shortage whatsoever of lobby efforts by those whose products ended up being promoted. The dietary recommendation to prioritize carbohydrates produced a veritable epidemic of obesity and diabetes, resulting in what has been deemed by reliable researchers as one of the worst public health disasters of all time, dooming almost the entire Western population to a lifetime of catastrophe.
The entire Western population is North America now, of course. Yeah, I forgot. Like the World Series is just American basketball teams. Baseball.
Catastrophic chronic health problems. 42% of Americans are obese. Another almost equally large percentage are overweight. At least a third are in the early or later stages of diabetes, which is an exceptionally serious disease. $1.7 trillion is spent annually on chronic illness in the US. And the rise in such illness and cost is directly associated with the beginning of the God-forsaken top-down dietary guidelines that set us all on a carbohydrate-heavy dietary pathway.
There's a fundamental flaw in this argument that he's got. So he's put out some statistics, and I don't know where the source is of them, but let's pretend that the statistics about the health of Americans are true, and let's also say that maybe the impact of those negative health outcomes also aligned with when the food pyramid was released. So let's say those things are true. I think it's important to ask you and anyone watching this is, when was the last time you looked at the government's nutritional guidelines to determine what to have for dinner? Like, seriously, when did you last do that? You didn't, because no one does. Like, you see them in the doctor's surgery, or maybe you were shown it at school. But in the UK, at least, the government, I think it's called the Eat Well plate. I always get confused because WWF did the Live Well, I think. So Eat Well, Live Well. Anyway, but the Eat Well plate is, you never see it, and nobody refers to it in terms of making their choices. Now, government nutritional guidelines are used at a corporate business level. So they are partially designed to help influence businesses in the kind of food that they prepare and serve. However, again, I don't think that most food businesses are primarily led by the nutritional guidelines. Like, for instance, if I sort of started a food business, I would probably make that food business around something that I really enjoy consuming, like, say, coffee, for instance. So I'd go out and I'd want to make the best coffee I could, and one that I can also make a profit selling too. So now nutrition can come into that. If I was going to make, say, I don't know, sandwiches instead, then I might want to look at nutritionally balancing them. The point being is that I think that he's putting way too much emphasis on the impact of the food pyramid on the food that we eat. I think it has a very small impact relatively compared to the new product development that comes out of businesses, and then the food environment, which is basically what we go and witness and experience when we just live our day-to-day lives, like the marketing or our friends saying, hey, have you seen this new thing, or the fact that the nearest place to get food is a McDonald's, or what supermarkets put at the front of the store, or how much money you've got, or all these kinds of different impacts probably have way more effect than what's actually in the government's nutritional guidelines. So anyway, let's carry on with this.
There have been, in addition, dozens of studies debunking the claim that red meat causes disease. The PURE study, P-U-R-E, published in the journal Lancet in 2017, analyzing 140,000 individuals from 18 countries, revealed that, quote, higher carbohydrate intake, not meat and fat, note, was associated with an increased risk of total mortality, and that, quote, higher saturated fat intake was associated with lower risk of stroke. Lower
risk of stroke. He didn't say that higher intake of meat was associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease. And I'm going to post a link in the comments, in the caption below, to an article written by a really good guy on nutrition. And he's talking about nutrition misinformation and how there are people who have gone on the carnivore diet and now they are having serious cardiovascular problems because, you know what, eating lots of red meat is bad for you. It's as simple as that. And he said increased carbohydrate. Now he might go into it. He said increased carbohydrate has problems. Well, yet remember that sugar is carbohydrate. So perhaps if that increased carbohydrate is an increased intake in sugar, as in you're just eating lots of high sugar foods, well, yeah, that's going to have a negative impact on your health too, because it's not a balanced diet.
That is exactly the opposite of what we have been told by the beneficial centralizing agents.
Oh, for f***'s sake. This guy's just talking absolute. You see, this is the problem. A little bit of knowledge is dangerous. He's a clever guy. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely think that Jordan Peterson is really clever in many, many areas of psychology and philosophy, etc. But with this, it's like he's read a few studies and he's obviously talked to people who are big supporters of the carnivore diet, and especially within the carnivore community, there's a lot of slightly dodgy evidence that gets pushed around as being true. But, you know, it's long term, the carnivore diet is not going to be good for you. It's as simple as that. The problem is that people have only done it for a few years. It's not like something that we've got a lot of big long-term studies on. Anyway, let's carry on.
Who task themselves with determining what we, as sovereign and responsible individuals, should put in our mouths. So the health benefits of a pure vegetarian and vegan diet are dubious at best.
Look, he said the claims that vegan or vegetarian are healthy. And in essence, a well-planned vegan and vegetarian diet is healthy. The thing is notice I said well-planned, and this is kind of more or less the same for almost any food you eat, whether you're carnivore, whether you're vegetarian, vegan. If there's zero consideration going into your diet, as in you're not even thinking one iota about what you eat, you're just buying whatever you can and shoving it in your face just to like stop yourself from being hungry, then there's a good chance that it's not going to be a healthy diet, because the food that's available right in front of you isn't always going to be the most healthy option. A well-planned vegan diet, a well-planned vegetarian diet, a well-planned pescatarian diet, a well-planned low-meat diet, all of these things can be very healthy. In fact, the one diet that he's on is the carnivore diet, which as far as I'm aware, he only eats red meat and absolutely nothing else. As far as I'm aware, that's probably one of the least healthy diets you can consume, especially in the long term. From what I understand, people who start it often feel really good, they get mental clarity, they feel great about themselves, and I'm not challenging that. If that's how you feel, then brilliant, that's great, I'm glad you feel that. However, I would love you to come back to me in 20 years after being on that diet and let me know what your sort of health is like and what your bloods are like and everything, because it's the long-term impacts of the diet, not the short-term ones, that are actually what we need to think about there.
The American Environmental Protection Agency estimates that all farming produces only 11% of greenhouse gases in the US. Transportation produces 27%. Livestock accounts for 3%. And plant-based agriculture? 5%. According to the National Academy of Science,
those numbers seem a bit off to me. 11%, I honestly thought it was higher than that. Maybe it is, I'm not sure. I'd have to check the data on that. Let's see where he's going with this point. I'm interested. Let me go back a second.
For 3%. And plant-based agriculture? 5%. According to the National Academy of Sciences, if we eradicated all animal-based agriculture, we'd reduce greenhouse gases by a mere 2.6%. And it is no simple matter, by the way, and perhaps impossible, to manage a diet that is sustainable in the medium to long term by merely dining on plants. Chew on that.
The problem with this, and this is very much the same position that Elon Musk seems to take publicly, what they seem to be claiming is there's no point restricting what people eat or changing people's diets or trying to eliminate animal agriculture or even reduce the amount of meat people eat, because it's such a small percentage that it will make almost no difference. And at the same time saying, hey, look, transport uses way more. In fact, Elon Musk wants to make electric planes, you know, which would make an enormous difference as far as I'm aware if we have enough lithium or whatever batteries needed. So they're kind of saying, hey, look, transport, way bigger impact. And I guess they're probably saying that transport also is an optional thing, which I would kind of take a little bit of challenge with that. I think that it's not entirely optional. I think that we can make changes around our transport in the same way we can make changes around our diet. However, the transport changes that they perhaps are alluding to, let's talk about Elon Musk's electric planes. We don't have them. They don't exist. Like if he had electric planes today and they were flying everywhere, then that would be great, but he doesn't. So he's saying, don't worry, we don't need to do anything on food right now. Like we don't need to change food now, because obviously you and I can change what we eat today. I could stop buying meat if I wanted today, and that is an immediate beneficial impact on the environment. I can't go and get one of Elon Musk's electric planes because they don't fucking exist yet. So it's like he's saying, oh, don't worry, guys, you don't need to change what you eat because in like, I don't know, 10, 20 years, I'm going to like sort it all out. I mean, come on, like the latest data around the environmental emergency is shocking. And the idea that, you know, he's just said that if we got rid of all animal agriculture, we could reduce CO2 emissions by whatever, 2.6%. That's a really big change on a global level. So, you know, even if we did half of that and did 1.3%, that would be absolutely awesome. Because if every sector, if energy, transport, food, manufacturing, whatever, if every area reduced by 1%, 1.5% over the next like 5 years, let's say before 2030, then we would have actually made way more progress than we've made in the last 10 years. So this idea that just because it's only a small percentage means it doesn't matter is absolute nonsense. You know, it's like Jordan Peterson says, you know, you should make your bed in the morning or something like that, you know, or you should, one of his, I think, rules for life is that if you're walking down the street and you see a cat, say hello to it. You know, it's like me saying, what do you mean? Say hello to a cat. That's completely insignificant. That makes no difference to your overall happiness. You should just go to therapy instead. You know what I mean? It's like, no. Actually, small things do matter and small things can make a difference. So I think he might actually want to listen to some of his own psychology when it comes to thinking about the environment. Whew. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you like these and you want to see more of them, then post your links to videos that you want to see me react to in the comments and I will jump on them as soon as I can because this is great fun doing this and it's really enjoyable to look at people who have got a big platform and just see, well, are they talking sense or are they kind of talking nonsense? If you want to see more content like this, then hit the like button and also hit subscribe so you get a notification when I release more content. Every single week there's something about food, looking at food in a different way and helping you learn more about where your food comes from.